And welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Brian Mercier of Catholic Truth Channel on YouTube, and we're talking about answering common anti-Catholic objections. And actually, Brian, in the last segment, you laid down a bunch of them. Why don't we do Constantine started the Catholic Church? That was interesting. That's out there.
Yes, of course. One of my favorites. I actually just did a really sassy I'm trying to do different types of videos on TikTok because different types of things reach different people. So I made a really quick 20-second video and I said, Catholics, Constantine started your church, not Jesus. And then I said, oh, wait, there were over 30 popes before Constantine. Oh, forget it. It was a nice theory, though. And then I just cut the video.
Hey, there you go.
But people are like, oh, that's clever. I didn't, they enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love those little satirical, things. You don't actually answer the objection per se, but you undermine it to such an extent that you just pop the bubble. It's like it's no longer, possible to entertain that.
One of my favorite ones, I'll get back to your question, but I just have to say one of my favorite ones was, I said, Catholics, the Bible clearly says in Matthew 23:9 not to call any man your father. And what do you call priests? Father. You are going against the Bible, and I'm going to prove it to you. Look what it says here, right in 1 Corinthians 4:15. It says, Paul said, I became your father in the gospel. So you see, wait a second. He just said father. And so I went through here's another verse. And so I just read 3 or 4 verses that said father. And then I was like, oh, maybe Protestants are taking this verse out of context. And people love that video. It was so popular.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to Constantine.
We could write a book on that. Have a list of, comeback, counter example, just balloon popper type comebacks.
We could call it that. Right. Balloon poppers for you.
Yeah, there you go.
So Constantine, people say that, the Catholic Church was started in the 4th. Sometimes people say the 5th. Some people say 6th or 7th centuries. But this is really impossible. And it comes from a lack of knowledge of history. They just assume that Constantine took over the Council of Nicaea. They assume that Constantine ran the Council of Nicaea. They assume that Constantine put his agenda in the Council of Nicaea or changed the church in some way. They made the Catholic Church the state religion. They blended paganism, but absolutely none of this is true. Not even a shred of it is true. The only thing that's true is that he called the council, but he didn't have anything to do with it. And he admitted that he's not a theologian. He doesn't know doctrine or religion. He said, that's your job. I'm just here to listen. And so he literally had no say in changing the church and legalizing. He only legalized Christianity and allowed Catholics not to be beheaded, put in lava, ripped apart limb from limb, dragged from horses. He allowed them to worship freely, but he didn't make it necessarily a state religion. And he didn't have any part in the Council of Nicaea. So there's a lot of straw man arguments. And as I said before, there were over 30 popes before Constantine. And I ask people, if there were over 30 popes before Constantine, how could Constantine have started the Catholic Church? Moreover, if you read the writings of the earliest Christians, you're going to see that all of them claimed to be Catholic, and not just generically Catholic as the Orthodox and Anglican churches claim, but distinctively Catholic. I mean, Tertullian in the year 200 talks about the Bishop of Rome and the Church of Rome being the premier church that has the primacy over the other churches, from where our authority derives, which comes down from the apostles. That's in the year 200. That's 113 years before Constantine ever came to power. So why is he talking about the Catholic Church? And why is he talking about the succession of popes? And why is he talking about the authority of the church? And why is Ignatius of Antioch, a Catholic bishop, talking about priests and bishops and deacons and all distinctively Catholic things long before Constantine, if it hadn't been invented yet? So these are questions that people really can't answer or don't want to answer. And if they do try to grapple with it, they usually end up changing their perspective.
How about Peter never went to Rome? That was really popular when I started back in the early 90s. And then it just disappeared. And I'm surprised it's still being asked.
I feel like it's being asked more, and surprisingly, I feel like it's being asked more against, Protestant pastors will bring it up. Protestant apologists will bring it up. People who should know better, who should have done some research before they started their work. They're the ones bringing it up. Most Joe Schmoes don't really think about it. Yeah, sure, sometimes it does come up, but, this is their thing. If Peter went to Rome, then it necessarily means that the Catholic Church is true, which doesn't follow to begin with. But if he did go to Rome and he was bishop there, and he was bishop there for 25 years, and he built up the church there with St. Paul, the two greatest apostles, then maybe, just maybe, that church developed, an aura of authority there. It came to be seen as the center of the church, because the two greatest apostles were there. That primacy of authority almost, in a sense, dwelled there. Peter, who held the keys, and Paul, who was the master apostle of evangelization. And I went to a church. I don't know if I've told this story before, but I went to a church and I got a free CD set, and it was 2 CDs debunking the Catholic Church. And the pastor was an ex-Catholic, and he said, of course, he's quoting people like Lorraine Bettner and all of these people. They just quote without actually fact checking them. But Lorraine Bettner and others say, oh, there's no proof that Peter went to Rome. There's not a shred of evidence anywhere, ever, not one. So I wrote him a 4-page letter about all the people who, said that Peter was in Rome. And not just anybody, but the earliest Christians and the earliest Christian bishops and the earliest Christian priests and apologists and people who knew the apostles. They all say that Peter was in Rome, including Augustine, who Protestants love to hijack as a Protestant. They love to say he's a Protestant, but he even admits that he was in Rome, and he enumerates the list of popes from Peter to the pope of his day. How could he do that if he was Protestant?
Yeah.
And so, but Eusebius, the earliest church historian, talks about it. Liber Pontificalis, which is from the 4th century, but it's the oldest history of the papacy that we have, says that Peter went to Rome. And in fact, Eusebius says that not only did he go there, not only was he bishop there, but he died there after serving as bishop for 25 years. So all the evidence says that Peter was in Rome, and no evidence says to the contrary. So, I don't know how people get this information, except they read it from somebody who has no idea what they're talking about, and then just repeat the person who has no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah. And we have his bones. You have archaeological evidence. You have all the patristic evidence, and no other place claimed that he died in any other city but Rome. You're absolutely right. It's just a huge void in terms of against him being in Rome. And everything points towards it. Yet this thing lives on. It's weird. It's like a zombie. It should still walks the earth.